friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. So today at work I ended up finishing again The Magic by Lisa Kleypas and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This is a historical romance set in like the 1860s and 70s and it is Second Chance and it follows McKenna and Aline. They originally had like, you know, a thing when they were kids, you know, all the way growing up. They grew up together, and when they are both like 18 and 19 respectively, he ends up getting sent away because she has to decide between him and her family, and she chooses her family. He gets sent away, and then 12 years later when they are adults, he comes back with kind of a vengeance plan in mind, and he feels like he was cheated out of his life and he wants to ruin her, basically. And then it goes from there. And we're also getting kind of, not even really a side plot, but I would say they get almost equal page time, the romance between Kenna's friend and Aline's sister. And honestly, I liked that storyline more than I liked McKenna and Aline. I didn't really feel connected to the story as a whole. I think that if we hadn't spent so much time on a different couple, then I would have been able to relate to them a little bit more than I did. But I liked McKenna. He was like the definition of like broody and all that, but there is like the scene where he's literally brought to his knees, and I really liked it, but I just didn't really feel all that connected to it. And I think that if we had had those separate books, maybe I would have been able to connect a little bit more. But this is kind of like the same feeling that I have with all of the historical romances that I've read. I read the Destiny series by Beverly Jenkins, and I read the Girl Meets Duke series by Tessa Dare, and both of them were kind of just like, I felt like there was a barrier between me and the story, and I'm not sure why. Hopefully in my journey with historicals, that will change. But at the moment, that's kind of just what I'm dealing with. Blood and Honey, which is the second book to Serpent and Dove, came through my library and I can now read it. So my plan is to reread Serpent and Dove. I've already kind of started. I'm not that far in. I'm maybe 13 pages in. And then read Blood and Honey. I really like this a whole lot. I know that there are a lot of people that complain about it, and there are elements of this that people don't really like, but I think as a debut it was great, and I'm excited to pick up the second one. I just kind of want to reread it so I can get back into this world. I could read a recap, but I just feel like I want to reread it, and I had planned to read a fantasy off my shelf anyways, and the library gods just said, here you go. Here's Blood and Honey. Let's reconvene when I have gotten a little bit more through this, and I will tell you the premise and my thoughts. I'll probably update you at the 50%. Like I said, this is a reread, but I haven't read it in a while, and I read it kind of back when I was still on like reading all of the hyped books of BookTube when I first started my channel. So we'll see how my feelings have changed. It hasn't been that long. It's only been like a year, and we will come back at the 50% mark. So happy Monday and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. Hi friends, it is Tuesday and I am 50% of the way through Serpent and Dove, and I am picking up on way more of this book than I did the first time. Just some kind of like world building stuff. This is the story of Lou and Reed, and in this world it's kind of like an alternate France where there is like magic. It's not necessarily specified on like a real world timeline what year it is, but it feels very like 1800s, if I had to guess. But it follows Lou and Reed, and Lou is a witch and Reed is a witch hunter. He is part of they don't call it the Catholic Church, but it's basically the Catholic Church. And he was an orphan brought in by the head priest. He was then trained to be a chasseur, something like that, which are basically witch hunters. And then Lou is also an orphan living on the street, and she is a witch. And we kind of in the beginning get kind of an understanding of she ran away from her coven, but we don't really know why. Through a mishap in a theater, Reed is trying to chase down Lou because she is a wanted thief. They end up having to get married because she was previously beat up by some guys. And so when Reed is chasing her, he falls on her, her dress ends up ripping, and it looks like he's been beating her up and trying to do some stuff to her. The church, in all their glory, decide that, well, why don't we just get them married? Because if it's his wife, he can legally do whatever he wants. He owns her. He won't get in trouble for, beating her because it's his right. The reason that I said in the beginning that I don't think it's the best ever, but it's a fantastic debut, is because the magic system is interesting. I don't think that it's explained very well, and I think there are some plot holes with it where it's not always consistent all the time. But you have series by well-known authors that have been writing for a long time that have plot holes in their magic systems and things like that. So I think as a debut author, this is great. I think the relationship that she builds between Lou and Reed is very believable, just as far as their personalities go. Reed is very straight-laced, doesn't believe that women should curse, women should be very proper, and Lou is the exact opposite. She is the exact opposite of what a woman should be, and she's very unapologetically herself. And I think what makes the relationship good in this is that even though we are only with them a short amount of time before they start developing feelings for each other, I'm at the 50% mark, so I'm about 200-ish pages in, and I would say they've been married a couple of months at this point. I think the reason that it's so believable that they would develop feelings for each other over time is because we're getting these little interactions of them showing their sweeter sides and showing that they are caring and that they are not what each other thinks the stereotypical. Even though Reed doesn't necessarily know that she's a witch, he has these preconceived notions about women, how women should act, and what it says about Lou that she doesn't act that way. And so she's kind of breaking down those barriers, and you're slowly seeing that happening. An example of that is in the very beginning when he first finds out that the church expects him to marry her. He constantly uses the word heathen, the heathen, because she obviously doesn't believe like he believes, and so he calls her heathen. And then there's a line about here where he calls her my little heathen. So you can kind of slowly see their feelings for each other developing, and they're getting under those layers of preconceived notions that they have about each other. And I think that's what makes this so believable. In addition to that, it's just fun. It's fun, it's fast-paced, the characters are endearing, and even though you're really spending the majority of your time in this one building, it's interesting. And there's enough going on with the world building and you wanting to know how are they going to resolve their issues, that it really propels the story forward. There's a lot of different plot lines going on here, not just their relationship. You're also getting a little bit of Reed and the church and Lou and her past, and also there's this weird thing going on with the witches where anybody that has been attacked, witches are feared, and anybody in the city that has been attacked by the witches are taken to this hospital in the top layer of this church or this academy thing, and they're experimented on because the church wants to figure out a drug or something to stop the witches. And so you are seeing people getting experimented on, and so there's this undercurrent of weirdness going on there and weirdness with the magic, but it's all just fun. and it has like this edgy feeling to it. So it kind of just all comes together and makes for like an enjoyable experience. And it's kind of had the same feelings that From Blood and Ash had, of just like that edgy darkness underneath and that fast-pacedness with the endearing characters that just like makes it a good time. I'm enjoying it probably more than I did the first time. The first time I just devoured this book. I think I read it in one day, which I'm set to read it in one day, but I didn't notice like the nuances and things that go into this and the things that Shelby Mahurin did well. And I kind of was just like, oh, this is, you know, just fun. And I didn't notice like the world building and the magic system and all that, which I'm glad that I reread before I read Blood and Honey, because I know the world expands a lot. I'm definitely glad that I reread this, and I am enjoying it more and noticing a lot of the things that I didn't notice before more. So we will talk when I finish. Hey friends, I am not feeling my very best right now. My partner and I got tested today, and we will get the results back in a couple of days, but not doing great. But I thought I would update you guys because last night I finished Serpent and Dove, and I would still give this 4 stars like I did the first time. I appreciated the second go round more of an understanding into the magic system. First read it, I didn't feel like it was as clear, but the second time around, I definitely realized that it is a lot of like equivalent exchange. And while some of like the equivalent exchange didn't make a lot of sense, it was cool to see, and I think I understood the ending a little bit more than I did the first time with like what happened with Reed. And yeah, I like how the magic worked. Basically, it's like the witch sees like a golden, at least Lou's kind of witch. There's different kinds. There's like blood witches and stuff, but her kind of magic, she sees like a golden thread of all the possibilities that she could do with her magic, and then whichever one she picks like requires an equivalent exchange. An example was she wanted to use her magic to taking all the pain away from a witch who was being burned at the stake, and so she like switched their whatever and like took her pain away, but she was the one that ended up burning. And sometimes it's like a sacrifice of like a broken bone, other times it's like a memory, so that isn't super clear about like what exactly you have to choose each time, but a soft magic system is like not really necessarily that big of a deal. Today, just a little bit while ago, I got 63 pages into Blood and Honey, and this picks up pretty much immediately after the ending of the first one. This one opens up with them in the camp outside of like the chateau where Lou's mother and family lives. They're trying to like formulate a plan about what they're gonna do moving forward, who they're gonna ally with, and you are seeing Reed really struggling with the fact that he killed, and he's trying to like really shove his grief down rather than thinking about it and like acknowledging it. So I'm sure as the book goes on, we're going to see him dealing with that grief, and he's also dealing with the pain of like having to work against these people in this cause that he like has believed and loved in his entire life. So there's a lot going on with Reed. Not necessarily too much going on with Lou. I definitely feel like what we've gotten so far has mostly to do with Reed's torment. We've gotten a hint that with each memory that is given up, like a witch gives up for their powers, it changes who they are. And so I think we're going to start seeing a change in Lou. We're definitely seeing her lose some of her confidence, but it's not necessarily like playing a huge part right now. I think because I read Serpent and Dove so close to this, I'm not really noticing like a distinct difference in writing or anything like that. I'm still like enjoying it. I'm reading it. I've read it super quickly. Like I got to where I am really fast, and it's just as readable as the first one. And yeah, I know some people weren't like too thrilled with this one. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy or what, or like a series, but I know some people weren't thrilled with this sequel, but we will see how I'm feeling about it. And then, as you saw from my previous clip, I did go by my library and pick up some books, and so they do curbside, so I didn't actually like interact with anybody. I think once I finished Blood and Honey, I am going to either pick up, because I'm still kind of in a fantasy mood, I think I'm going to either pick up Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning, which I'm not quite sure what this is about, but I know it's like a fantasy romance, and it's like an OG, like on everybody's list of fantasy romances. Or I'm gonna pick up Ruthless Gods, which is the second book after Wicked Saints, and I gave Wicked Saints a 2-star, but I really liked the ending and like where I feel like the direction of the series is going, so I'm excited to see if what I'm predicting and hoping happens actually happens. But that's gonna be it for this little update. I have something weird going on with my ear, aside from like not feeling great, that is like actually making it, the more I talk, the more it hurts, my ear hurts. So I will update you guys probably when I'm done with Blood and Honey, or when I'm 50% of the way through, or when I have something to say, assuming that my health doesn't get any worse than it is now. But I'm just gonna go back to laying on the couch. I have not left this couch all day, reading and watching some Twitch. So we will talk in a second for you. Hey friends, it is Friday. We still haven't gotten our results back, and I'm still not feeling great. I have more energy than I did yesterday, but I think I also have an ear infection, so there's like a headache just this side of my face, basically. I am halfway through Blood and Honey, and come on, baby girl. Come on. Come on. Okay. I'm liking it as a whole. I am liking some of the things that Shelby Mahern is doing with Reed's character. When I read a lot of, like when I was reading reviews, like lower rated reviews for this book, a lot of people were complaining that Lou and Reed weren't really like the characters that we knew from the first book. I agree, but I don't think that that's a problem. To begin with, they went through some like traumatic stuff in the first one that you would expect any character to have to deal with. Both Reed and Lou went through some traumatic things. Reed is dealing with a lot of grief, and in addition to that, he's dealing with the fact that his world has completely changed. Everything that he knew since the time he was a child is completely different, and he's having to continually fight these biases that he's had. And so I don't think that it's bad or anything like that. And in addition to that, Lou is changing. Like there's something going on with her, and she's doing all of this magic that she repressed for a really long time, and she's giving up really important parts of herself to do this magic, and it's gonna affect her. And as far as like the relationship aspect, like the romance between Lou and Reed, they only knew each other for like a month before all of this happened, so they didn't know how each other deals with traumatic things and how to get along and what to do when you argue, and they haven't laid the groundwork of a strong relationship, so they don't know how each other functions really. The fact that we are seeing them going through these traumatic things, dealing with these things separately, while also not really feeling comfortable with their partner, talking about things, so they're constantly arguing, I don't think is very unrealistic, and I would expect that. I wouldn't have wanted to go into this book with their relationship being okay, with Reed not dealing with the things that he's dealing with, and just being completely okay with what he is and what he had to do at the end of the book, and being okay with the changes in Lou. And I wouldn't want Lou to be the same character that she was in the first one, because she's also been through some traumatic things with her mother, and the fact that she's losing herself and her magic is unpredictable. I wouldn't want them to be the same characters, because then it would be as if the things that are going on aren't affecting them, and they wouldn't feel like real characters, and it would be hard for me to like sympathize or empathize with them in this situation, because they're not reacting how I feel like they should be reacting. They're not reacting like real people. And so I don't really get the complaint that that's a problem with the story. It's definitely obvious that it's there, like they are very different and they're arguing all the time, and there's a huge strain in their relationship, and I just think that that was well done by Shelby Mahern. I am seeing some like plot holes with, they might not necessarily be plot holes, but there are things that she set up in the first one that are drawing some blanks with Lou, and we don't really know why they're drawing blanks, like because we're not in her head all the time when she's making these decisions about her magic and what memories to give up and things like that, it's hard to know why she's acting the way she's acting. For example, there's a scene with Bass who shows back up and he doesn't remember her because in the first book, she took all of his memories of her and Coco away, and then when Baz is attacking with his group, we don't really understand why Lou doesn't remember that she did that, because we don't, at least from what I can remember, or we don't get a scene where Lou takes her memories of Baz or that event away either. So it's very confusing. Like, we've seen scenes where she gives up happy memories with him, where they were like loving each other and things like that, but I don't remember her giving up that specific memory of her taking the memories away from him. So that scene was very confusing, and I don't know if we're gonna get clarification on that. I don't know if it was like she forgot that she was trying to set up that plot line or not. Essentially, as far as like the plot is going, they split up to get these different groups as allies to help them in their quest, and now they've met back up and they're going to go to a werewolf compound to get the werewolves on their side. That's basically it. The plot isn't too fast-paced or too heavy, but I think it's fast-paced enough that we can keep the story going along, but also focus on the characters and like what the characters are going through. And so I feel like the complaints that I read about in the reviews and stuff, they don't really make sense to me because I'm enjoying myself, and I think that all of the character work and things that we're going through are like needed and should be there. So overall, I think that Shelby Mahurin has done a great job with the sequel, and I am going to continue. I am a little past the halfway mark. I'm on page 292 of like 530. So we will talk again when I have finished it, but it's probably going to be like a 4-star, just like the first one was, and I have no complaints about what's happening thus far besides some of like the plot holes, but I'm enjoying it. Hi friends, I don't have a whole lot of energy, so we will make this update quick, but I finished Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin, and I am going to give this 4 out of 5 stars. Everything that I said in my last clip still stands. I will admit that this is a little bit longer than it really needs to be. I think, especially around like this part, it starts to feel a little draggy and a little like, okay, well, let's get on with it. Like I said, I liked the exploration of all of the things that they're dealing with. I can't say that I'm like a huge fan of the ending, just because trying to keep it as spoiler free as possible. I feel like we went through a lot of character development with Lou, and the ending, specifically like the last couple of pages, just really felt like regression, and I'll be interested to see how she deals with it. I do think it's like an interesting ending. We usually see a certain type of ending to a second book, or I can think of one pretty common way this would have gone, and it didn't follow that template, so we'll see. I'm definitely excited for the third one, and I'm excited to see what she can do. I think as a second book, she's only ever written this and Serpent and Dove. I think it was a great book. She definitely has a talent. So I will say I don't really feel like this should be YA, and I know there's certainly an argument to be had about YA authors following the YA group, the kids that are now adults that kind of started popularization of YA, and so they're kind of like following them into adulthood. If I was like 12 or 13 and I saw this in my library, it'd be a little iffy, I think, with some of the content. I really enjoyed it, and I am excited for the third one and just to see what Shelby Mahurin is capable of. I am probably going to go back to reading, I don't remember what it's called, the third book in the Madison Kate series. I started reading it yesterday and I put it on hold for Blood and Honey, but I'm gonna go back to reading that. I'm like 200 pages in, 260 pages in, and I'm really liking it, and we will talk about it a little bit later on. Hey friends, it is now Tuesday of the following week. This weekend I got mega sick and I couldn't do anything. We had to postpone our manga club meeting. Like, it was just really bad. My health just got way worse. And so I'm gonna extend out this vlog until the weekend because Chain of Iron is getting delivered today, and I'm gonna read that this weekend and do a whole separate reading vlog for that. So since we last talked, I have read, I think the last thing I said I read was Blood and Honey, right? So I read Blood and Honey, and then I read the last two books in the Madison Kate series. I read Fake and Kate, and I gave her both 4 stars. I absolutely loved this series. I've said it before and time again, but it's just really fun. It's a really good way to get your mind off things, and the story is just so messy. There's so many different plot lines. There's so much going on. There's never a dull moment. All of the legs of the reverse harem are just fantastic. They all have their own distinct personality. It's written super well. The ending is absolutely perfection. My one complaint is that I feel like one of the storylines with her stalker was wrapped up a little too quickly, just because we dragged it out over the whole series, and then it was like wrapped up what felt like in like 50 pages. It was just great, and I'm excited to read more from Tate James if I'm looking for just like a fun time. But I would highly recommend you go check it out if you have not already. My TBR should be up before this video goes up, so you should be able to see that. But the audiobook that I'm going to be listening to is The Troop. I don't know what physical book I'm going to go for, but ebook wise, I am thinking of reading The Idea of You by Robin Lee. This is an older woman, younger man romance between a mom and a like 20-something-year-old guy in a boy band, and she like takes her daughter to his concert, and then they meet, and then they have like a romance. So I think I'm gonna read that as an ebook, and then we will figure out what I'm gonna read physically when I get home today. But that's the deal. I am so excited for Chain of Iron. Like, I'm so stoked, and I'm excited to get into it, but that will have to wait. Happy Tuesday. I hope all of you guys had a better week than I did, and we will talk later. Hey friends, it is Wednesday, and yesterday at work I finished Love Scammed by Rilsey Adams, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. So this is like a blind date vacation situation. So the hero and the heroine's respective cousins, which are the couple from 8, if you've read that one, they set them up on a vacation, like a 5-day vacation, which is also like a blind date. And it's like a beach vacation, and it's really nice. I really love the couple. I think the thing that makes Rilsey Adams' stories so great is that she can make believable, heartwarming relationships and characters that work so well in under 200 pages, which is just mind-blowing, because the problem that I usually have with novellas is if the novella is trying to start a relationship and get to the L by the end of the novella, I'm probably gonna have some problems with it. So if it's just like about, you know, hooking up and seeing where things go, that's cool. But if you're trying to make me believe that they're gonna fall in love in 100-something pages, it's gonna be hard for me to do. But I think Rilsey Adams does a fantastic job of like making them believable. I also started and got 203 pages into Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. So this has been touted as a fictionalized account of the R. Kelly situation, which I can definitely see. Tiffany D. Jackson has said like it's basically a common story about what happens when Black girls get into abusive, traumatic situations and they don't really get taken seriously, or no one really cares. So basically it's about Enchanted, who is at the beginning of this novel 17, and she goes to a singing competition where she meets Corey Fields, who is a 27-year-old R&B artist who is famous, who's very well known, and he starts grooming her, and then they enter into a relationship, and he is very abusive, and he just takes advantage of her, and it's horrible. And you slowly see the progression of him manipulating her, and you'll see like little things that he'll do where he'll be like, oh, well, this is just us. Like, I'm gonna give you my phone number, but don't tell anyone because this is just between us. This is our thing. There's just so many scenes in this that I think are so intentional, and this is written with so much intention. All of this is just so purposeful, and each scene is so necessary, and it calls back to itself. So something he did in like chapter 3 will be called back in like chapter 30, or, you know, whatever, because she's setting up this so well, and it just, it's gut-wrenching. It's hard to read. It's disgusting, but I think it's really important, and I'm going to continue reading it. I don't see this not being 5 stars. Probably end up finishing it today because I'm on 203 of like 350. So I should be able to get through this quickly, but it's really hard. And I am a little bit of the way into the troop. So this is essentially a horror novel about this group of Boy Scouts who go on a camping trip to this deserted island with their scoutmaster. And then this guy shows up and he's like sick, and there's like something moving under his skin, and he just keeps saying like, I need to feed, and he's like horribly malnourished and just doing weird stuff, and like he threw up like this weird saliva that like burned the scoutmaster's face. It's disgusting. And yeah, I'm listening to the audiobook for that. It's definitely making me a little nauseous. Like, if you listen to reviews or watch reviews of this or read reviews, people will be like, this is one of the most disgusting things that I've ever read. And it's definitely gross. Like, it's definitely nauseating, and ugh, it's just disgusting. But it's written very well, obviously, if it can induce nausea. It's written how it's supposed to be written. But I'm going to continue listening to that one on my drive home, you know, to and from work. That is the update, and we will talk later. This cover, oh, we love her. Hey friends, it is the same day, Wednesday? Yes. I have some reading updates, but before we get into the book that I finished, I ended up DNFing The Troop, which was that horror audiobook that I was listening to, mainly because it was just absolutely the most disgusting thing I've ever read. And I think that's like part of the appeal for this, is that it's really disgusting. And so, like I said, if you read and watch reviews and stuff, everyone will basically say the same thing. Like, it's the most disgusting thing I've ever read. And to me, that's just not enjoyable. So this guy, the guy that shows up on the island with the boys, I'm gonna go into mild spoilers. Well, I'm gonna go into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear about this book, any point of this book, skip. But it's disgusting and I wouldn't recommend it. So the guy that shows up to the camp with the boys, not the scoutmaster, but the creepy guy that's sick, has like this scientifically made worm inside his, like tapeworm inside of his stomach that literally is eating him alive. And so he will eat anything. The bed, he will eat he will eat anything. And he just needs to eat until he dies. And then it starts to spread to the boys, and I DNF'd about 50%. There is a particular scene, and I'm gonna describe it as like easily and as simply and as least amount of disgusting as possible, because it's just, there's a scene where there's like a test subject. They bring in the human test subject for this research that they're doing, that they created this worm thing, and the human test subject is dying, and his body is literally rotting from the inside out, and he's like starving to death. And there's a scene right before the test subject dies where his butthole has fallen out of his body, and the worm is coming out of the butthole. And the test subject reaches down, he's barely alive, reaches down and eats the worm again. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. So I DNF'd at 50%. Like, this is not enjoyable to me. This makes me want to throw up. That's not fun. That's not for me. If you enjoy gross horror, then this might be fun for you, but it's just sickening. And like, there were several times where I like actually gagged. And it just made me nauseous, and it made me not want to continue. And I wasn't even reading it physically. But I will say it's written very well. Like, to the fact that I could even gag, like, it could initiate that level of disgustingness in my body so much that I actually had a visceral reaction to it, means that it was written well. But good God, it was disgusting. It was horrible. It was horrible. No. Oh, and I also mentioned in one of my earlier clips that I was going to start The Idea of You by Robin Lee, which is the like older woman, younger man rock star situation. I got 20% into that and DNF'd that as well. I can't pinpoint exactly what I didn't like about this. For starters, this is One Direction fanfiction, which I didn't love the writing. And I think we were supposed to find boy band member, like, I don't know, appealing. He wasn't. Like, there was a scene where he like he took his sunglasses off, they're eating in a restaurant, he puts them back on for like 2 seconds and then takes them, like, I just didn't like it at all. I didn't like the writing, and there was a lot more about like his rock starness than I would have enjoyed. Like, bring that after they're already established. And I wasn't a fan. I didn't like it. But something that I did read and give 5 stars was Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. I updated you guys this morning that I was like 200 and something pages in, and I ended up finishing it, and I finished it about an hour or so ago, but I just had to like decompress and like think. This is an incredibly hard read, and everything that we talked about in the previous clip still stands. There is a trigger warning page in the very beginning that I think is important, so if you have any sort of triggers, I would definitely go into this keeping that in mind, and I would really recommend you look for Own Voices reviews on the subject. But I loved this. Didn't love what was in it, but I appreciate the book. And I'm going to share the author's note with you, which I would recommend reading if you pick this book up, even though I'm telling you it right now. She says, if you've read Allegedly or Monday's Not Coming, you already know this book was inspired by a case, but this book is not about R. Kelly, nor is it a recount of his allegations. This book is about the abuse of power. It's about the pattern of excusing grown men for their behavior while faulting young girls for their missteps. It's about the blatant criticism of girls who are victims of manipulation. It's about holding the right people accountable for the crime he committed. It's about corporations attempting to silence victims and continuing to profit off the very monsters they helped create. About the individuals who are meant to protect and serve, never believing victims in their moments of bravery. It's about girls trying to defend themselves against the world and the possibility of similar situations happening to anyone, even to the girls from 2-parent households. This book is not about R. Kelly. It's about adults who knew the difference between right and wrong, because no matter where you stand on the issue, he knew better. I would really recommend this if you can read works like this. It's fantastically done. Very tastefully done, very gripping, just very important. So 5 out of 5 stars. So I let my partner pick my next read, and he doesn't read. So basically what I did was I took him this and The Bone Season and was like, which one do you think I should read? He said this one has a cooler cover and the Bone Season has a cooler name. He wanted me to go with this one. So I will be reading Wicked Saints. This is going to be a reread for me so that I can read the sequel. I originally gave this book 2 out of 5 stars the first time I read it, but I liked the direction that the last half was going, so I'm interested to see how it goes going forward. So this is essentially about Nadia and Seraphin. I'm gonna say that's his name. Nadia is a mage from one kingdom. She's like the last remaining mage, and the enemy kingdom is attempting to assassinate her, to get rid of her power. And then Seraphin, so whatever, he's the enemy kingdom's prince, and he's the one hunting her. She teams up with this guy named Mal, and Mal helps her escape, but he also has some secrets that has to do with this enemy kingdom. And Mal was absolutely my favorite character, and his storyline was the absolute best. The problems that I had with this, and this might get better as I reread it, was that the world building wasn't very strong, and I didn't quite grasp the magic system. I didn't really feel like a lot of time was spent helping us to understand how it works and all of that. But I'm still interested in the second one, like I said, because it goes in a very interesting way with a character that I was interested in. So I'm going to reread this, and it is only like 300, it's a little under 400 pages. So hopefully I can get through this before I start Tune of Iron. But that is this. I don't know what audiobook I'm going to be listening to. I didn't start another ebook while at work. So we will talk when I have more thoughts on this book. But happy Wednesday. Hi, and I apologize for the voiceover. Please take this very poor quality video of my ferrets playing. Quite frankly, I just didn't really want my face on camera today, but wanted to come on here and wrap up the reading vlog. So I ended up getting 142 pages into Wicked Saints, and I can understand, or I'm remembering why I wasn't a huge fan the first time. The magic system is really the large factor of this, in my opinion, being a bad book. Nothing is really explained. The author uses the idea of the gods speaking to our female main character so that she doesn't actually have to train or learn to use her powers. The gods just give her the ability to know how to use her powers, which, in my opinion, is really bad writing. Like I said, I'm going to continue, and we will move on to the second book in the series. Other than that, leave your comments down below on anything that I read in this video, or anything that you read these past 2 weeks. I would love to know. But if that is going to be it, I will catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching.